Hello and welcome to the HR People Pod, the CIPD's fortnightly podcast, bringing you expert views on what's happening in the world of work and beyond. Anything really that's impacting the people profession. My name's David D'Souza. I'm Director of Profession at the CIPD and I ate a whole Easter egg last night. And joining me in the studios, we have two first-timers for the pod. So first, we have Sasi Venables. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I'm Sasi Venables. I'm an in-house HR business partner at the University of Worcester and founder of the HR Confidence Club. I was recently chair of Hereford and Worcester CIPD branch as well.
For which we will be eternally thankful.
I miss it.
And you'll be Mr. Council as well, and like stuff like that.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Annoying you there.
Quite emotional. I was about to go, annoying me in so many different domains.
Yes.
But it's not true. And we also have Worrall joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning. Should I say this morning or this afternoon? I know that, do we keep that neutral?
I want to keep all of this in as well. Let's bit rough.
Good, excellent. So that's good. So we're keeping it in. Good, excellent. So anyway, good morning. So my name is Rob Worrall. I have been working in professional services for almost 20 years now in legal, professional and consultancy roles, whether that be as HR Director, Chief People Officer, different roles. Currently on a career break and loving that. I've had 8 months so far since I left my last firm and now starting to look for a new role. So enjoying that as well.
Oh. Fantastic. Lovely to have you both here today. Really excited about it.
Not jealous about that at all.
Yes. Anyone listening, the first hard recommend is apparently a career breakup. I'm tempted, but I think I need to do at least the next half hour here before I get to that. Just want to stress for everyone listening to this that everything we talk about, we'll talk about in a general fashion. So we may have a jumping off point that is from one particular story, one particular organisation, but we all know as practitioners that actually there's nuance and there's context when you get into the detail, but there's some really interesting things happening more broadly. Before we get started, we record these on a Friday and they go out the following week. But what is clear from recent events that we're in the midst of is that it's very difficult to predict what things may look like week to week. Our thoughts are with anyone involved in current conflicts, the impact that it has on individuals, on friends, on family, on colleagues, and on organisations and the level of uncertainty that you might have within them. Support will always be available from the CIPD, and please do get in touch with us if there's anything concrete we can do beyond the broader guidance that we offer. But the first thing we wanted to talk about was about organisations and individuals in crisis, but in a broader sense, recognising the sensitivity of what's playing out in the work currently. So it's been a few really challenging years for people in general. There have been societal upheavals, there's been conflict, we still suffering the scars of the pandemic, a range of really significant issues. There have been cybercrime and outages, there's been cost of living crisis in different countries and a range of things that happen externally but then impact organisations. And natural disasters again kind of tend to get some time in the kind of spotlight but impact communities for a longer amount of time. For organisations, that brings a real challenge over how you look after your people and how you respond to them. And what we wanted to have a conversation about, and we've covered this in a previous podcast as well, which we'll reference in the notes, but what does the organisation and the profession have to do in situations like this? What does an effective response look like?
I think people are really exhausted because of all the things that you've said. And our profession, we are really struggling around our mental health, chronic stress, compassion fatigue. So whilst obviously we do all that we can to help people, individuals and families as much as we can in our organisations, I think we do have to remember as well ourselves in that, we deal with so many difficult conversations in our role anyway, let alone the impact that's going on. And sometimes we're in the middle of a really difficult conversation and then we're going off to something else and we're taking some of those emotions away with us. So I think we need the balance as well as responding effectively, also looking after ourselves. And I think from a leadership point of view, it's really about being open and understanding people's needs is what I would say we need to respond quickly on.
So there's a communication piece that's at the heart of it, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a sensitive situation happening. It may be the first time you're coming across it in your career.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to work out what the right thing might be to do beyond your professional judgment is to speak to people and understand what they need.
And I think be open and willing to say, I don't have all of the answers as a leader. I know people look to your leadership team for the answers, and ultimately you'll be the ones that make the decisions. But I think it's about getting those perspectives as well to inform your decisions, and I think not making those decisions in isolation.
We all know, I think it's looking at the different layers you need to think about, because firstly, you may have people who are directly impacted. You may have an office in a particular area, or you may have colleagues who are working in an area, as well as people who are travelling with business, or to your point earlier, friends, colleagues. There's different, I think, aspects of, in any response, how do you start to think about the people who are there physically, or indeed people who are affected because they've got family or friends there. And I think we've talked about communication, the layers of it. You think about, you've got colleagues, you've got people who you work with, you've got then the culture of the firm. What is it that we stand for? What is it that we want to come and say and do at this point? And I think, I'm sure we'll talk later, because global uncertainty is more constant than I think it has been. It's about building resilience into the firm. And I think, therefore, clients look at you to make sure that what you're doing is helping your people, because by helping your people, you help your clients deliver as well.
Yeah, I was reading something a while back, and I may have referenced it on the podcast. Apologies to long-term listeners, about the fact that we're having multiple generational events per generation. So the things that you go, that's a life-defining piece. We have multiple of those happening on a really frequent basis. And I think, to your point around building resilience, it's learning as well. Each time something happens, how can we make sure that we learn as an organisation to prepare us better for next time? Because they're rarely exactly the same situation, but lots of the principles around what you want to do would be the same.
And I agree. And I think something you were talking about is, if we think about one of the core components of success with this, is our managers, our people managers. And, it's really important that we equip them to have the skills to be comfortable to have conversations, authentic, genuine, individual conversations with people. And that isn't about having like hours of conversation. It may be in some situations, it will depend, but it's about really making sure that we're investing that time. And to your point, making sure that we're looking after them as well, because ultimately, we as a leadership can say what we want almost, but unless it's authentic and genuine and people feel that they're being listened to, they've got a safe environment to talk, it's really making sure, I think, those principles are built in, and that people feel safe, secure to have a conversation, and they feel they're being listened to.
Yeah. I think it's about responding quickly. So, if we're upskilling our managers, our teams, our leadership, so that they can respond really quickly, because there's nothing worse than silence in the middle of a crisis and everybody just panicking and feeling fearful without any answers. So even if you're talking and opening the dialogue, it's really, really helpful. And I think equally, if we're sending people to other countries for work and a crisis occurs, how are we responding? How are we looking after them? What happens when they're out there for longer than the period intended and they're unable to work? I know that organisations are going to be under pressure, of course, but we've got to protect them while they're there, get them back safely, look after their families, and that would be fearful for individuals based out there and for families. So.
Yeah, and then there's a longer term lens to this as well. So we know with lots of these incidents there are implications for organisations. That might be in terms of their cost, that might be in terms of their supply chain, that might be in terms of their access to labour, the confidence in their future plans. And that's, I suppose, doesn't show up in the moment necessarily at the crisis, but it's the impact afterwards, and it's helping organisations realign after that and understand what the challenges are and what needs to happen next.
And if I could, I think part of, we've talked about managers, we've talked about people, is making sure that the support that is available to people is visible. And you were talking about people understanding things. It's, I think, as important to say what you don't know as what you do know. Be really clear. Use really authoritative sort of data, whether that's from the Foreign Commonwealth Office or other areas. Make sure that you're putting on information people can trust and sort of use as well. But also internally, things like the employee assistance programs, other things that people go, actually, I can use this and feel they can, but it's really visible, it's really accessible, and people know where to get that.
I think sometimes organisations might worry about setting a precedent because they need to do something that's different that they haven't done before. But I think as long as you can justify some of your decision making, that's really crucial. And you might need to do something different in a particular situation that I don't think does cause risk to your organisation, but it is responding to that particular need.
I think that's a really good point. And I think one of the other things as well is the point around, we've talked about authenticity. We've talked about sort of people having an opportunity to have safe conversations. One of the things I've seen work really well is doing listening events, is where you get groups of people together and you listen. And from a leadership perspective, you absorb what people are feeling. You look at how people are responding, and genuinely, we were talking earlier, I know about responding to things, but actually making sure that people see that you're doing something with that. But I think just giving people the opportunity to be heard and people feeling listened to is important.
Hugely important.
So, Rob, you mentioned EAPs, and we're going to come on to benefits now. Just want to reaffirm with people, as I say, we'll provide guidance, we'll provide support. Please let us know if there's anything else that we can do. Hopefully, by the time this podcast goes out, there will be progress at least a sense of calm and more confidence for people. But there will be impacts felt, I'm sure, for a long time for organisations and individuals. And it's a key part of the work that we do, is making sure that organisations are still in a position to perform, but the people that are critical to that are looked after in the right way. Moving on. Most organisations invest significant time, money and energy into employee benefits. I imagine if you're listening to this, you work in an organisation that has at least some employee benefits. The aim is largely to boost performance, well-being or engagement. They tend to be the stated aims, but how do you know that you're actually delivering value? Or rather, what's the benefit of benefits? Well, our latest research suggests that many organisations don't know that. So the CIPD's reward survey, go on the website, download it, updated for this year, supported by everyone, found that 1 in 5 employers don't have clear objectives underpinning their benefits package. So they're providing benefits, they don't know why. That limits the ability to assess naturally whether the benefits are improving key measures around retention, productivity, attraction, whatever that may be. Ultimately, that leaves employers with a benefit package that might sound great on paper, but in practice, it's very difficult to know what's happening. So, Rob, I'm going to start with you this time. What's stopping employers from measuring the impact and effectiveness of their offering? Or how do you think an organisation, let's go for the big one. How is 1 in 5 organisations just going, look, we need some stuff, and not thinking about what for?
We've talked a moment ago about the speed of change that's happening in the world at the moment. I think a lot of people have had benefits packages that have been in place for a period of time. And there's almost like a nervousness of, well, if I remove that, how will people feel about that? Should we remove it? Should we not? What do we put in its place, etc.? I think also sometimes people are nervous about actually if they look into it, is it actually giving a good return on investment? So I think fundamentally what's really important with benefits is how to support people at different points in their life. Does it actually give them what's needed? And I think actually increasingly it's thinking about different people's touch points with benefits, whether that be maternity, paternity, whether they be carers, whether it be neurodivergent colleagues, whatever it may be. It's making sure that what you've got is a benefits package that is now relevant in today's world, which is fast changing. And how do we make sure that you've got something that people can engage with and go? Because it isn't just a take up. And I think sometimes what happens is, to your point, employers go, 50% of people, or 60% of people, or 80% of people are they're taking it up. But is it actually impacting the bottom line? Are we seeing that actually people feel more engaged, motivated? Are we seeing, sickness drop? How do you really start to judge it? And I think sometimes people are afraid of actually looking at, is it being successful?
Absolutely. And looking at the measures, like you say, at different times as well, because if they're creating them with intentionality and they know that the stats at the start before something's implemented, that actually the take up of cycle to work scheme is going to be 45% and 45% of people do actually take it up, well, then it's hugely successful, isn't it? but I've never actually taken up a cycle to work scheme. So it's not one of the benefits I would go for. But I think sometimes that's missing at the start. They're like, oh, we think this will be a really good idea because it's about sustainability and we can get a good deal or what have you. But have they actually asked the people that are employed, and then do they know that it's successful because the original take-up have taken it up?
I think there's a couple of things here that are really interesting. One is around the symbolism of benefits. So what signal are you sending out? And there may or may not be utility in that, and you may have to think about the kind of proportionality of it. The other is, what problem are you trying to solve with those benefits? And how confident are you that it's going to solve them, and how are you going to track that? So to your point, if it's improve attraction, improve retention, where does that sit currently? How big an impact do we think this is going to have? Why that rather than something else?
I don't know what you both think, but I think fundamentally, if we think about this, what we want is people to be able to live well, to work well. That's a really simplistic way of looking at it. But if we can help people live well, they're typically going to work well, which actually has a commercial benefit, because what that means is people are turning up really effectively for their clients. So there's a real strategic lever to this, that actually by getting it right, you're providing something that really helps people. Fundamentally important, helps their families in some cases, but then actually it means they're working well. And I think we sometimes forget that the importance of this is actually, if we could get people to live well, work well, it improves the whole thing. And I think for me, you talked before retention, and I think if we think about productivity and efficiency, by getting people to really help them, it just does nothing but help, I think.
I'm just trying to think of the benefits that I've used personally, and then thinking about expectation, and we think about staff surveys and things like that. I think some organisations can get a bit disheartened when the take-up isn't there and benefits aren't utilised. But again, it's not something, or some of the things that are offered aren't going to be relevant in your lifestyle. So I guess, for example, my perception of the benefits on offer is going to be really disappointing, but it's not actually true. So I guess what I'm saying is that misalignment and that mismatch around individuals' needs and the organisation's intention.
There's a few interesting things when we think about benefits, because quite often they're lent on probably as heavily in recruitment as anything else. Like, come work here, here's the big list of things that we do. I guess from that point of view, I'll come back to that symbolic point, because I think it'd be harder. Sometimes just having that list is no track. You go, that's an employer that obviously wants to invest in its people. The fact that you look down the list and you go,
you get a mobile phone. I've literally seen that recently. That's listed as a benefit. We were having
a work mobile.
In a WhatsApp group. And it's an actual advert. You get a mobile phone. I don't want a mobile phone for work. Thank you. That is not a benefit to me.
We've seen previously, and it's come up in the podcast previously. Actually, no, I don't think it's come up in the podcast. It's come up in WhatsApp chat with my friends, which is a really different thing to this podcast. But like organisations, organisations advertising just the minimum statutory holiday entitlement as a benefit. I've seen that a few times recently, and this many breaks, and that's what you're legally entitled to. Yeah. So, but again, it's that list, isn't it? Like if we can do some things here that don't cost us too much money, that make us look good, maybe there's a return in that. And I think that's philosophically very different to what you're describing, Rob, which is everything you do, if it's a benefit, it should have some benefit.
Yeah.
And I think it's a thing of what, I'm going to use the word hurdles. It may sound slightly negative, but what are the hurdles that people get to actually use the benefit? So they say benefit X, but actually when you look at it, you've got to have XY service. You've got to therefore have been, whatever it may be, you've got to be a particular level within the firm. And actually I think increasingly, I'm not sure that's something that firms, of course, there's a cost point to it, and we're all commercial, you've got to think about that, but at the same time it is now starting to think about, how do you make it successful, how do you make this, what is the culture of the firm?
One challenge, I'm going to ask both of you about this one, because I think it's a big miss for organisations, and that's, I think benefits are thought of in like one category of things, like you have your benefits over here, but if you actually look at what people want from employers, that's around job design, that's around development, that's around reward, that's around opportunity, that's about management quality. And I wonder if some of those things that are, I guess, more transient, I can just pay for someone to provide that, at times masks the fact that you might work in an organisation, and the best thing about it is your immediate environment. It's going to help me flourish, help me perform, help me get on with my career. And organisations mistake a loan scheme for a certain activity for the concrete work, the more difficult work that they might have to do in those spaces.
Yeah, I would agree. And it goes back to that purpose, doesn't it?
Don't have to agree. Right.
Well, no, I do actually agree. I would tell you. I'd tell you if I didn't agree.
That's true.
But it does go back to that intentionality of the benefit and what Rob was saying around, are you trying to retain?
But I think from what you were talking about, I think it's really valid that what people are thinking about now is, do they have good quality work they feel engaged in, that they want to be doing? Do they then have like managers who are helping truly to develop them? Because we talk now about skills, without changing the subject, but we talk about people needing to develop their skills. Well, actually, as part of it now, people having the opportunity to get their skills base in its broader sense developed and actually think about it. And many employers do that. So I think to your point, it's quite broad now what benefits means. It's actually about when you go into an organisation, do you go, actually, it gives me sort of like the hygiene factors almost of some of the old benefits that you would expect. And I use that term deliberately, old that you would expect. But actually, what are some of the new things that people are looking for? Is it about skills development? Is it about how I can sort of really develop, grow and be sort of part of this organisation and feel that they are investing in me? And I think that's really interesting that we've got an opportunity to do that and really help people grow their skills, feel part of the organisation while they're there and be really successful.
And it goes back to basics, doesn't it? Right? What are we trying to achieve? So we want people turning up, showing up, excelling, getting better at their roles.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to attract people to do that. Okay, so what are we going to offer as an organisation? How are we going to structure what we do to try and deliver that? And that should then give you not only your benefit strategy, but what you're trying to do in the people space more broadly. And if you miss any of those steps, if you start with the company down the road is now offering this, maybe we should too, you miss that ability to listen to your people and their needs and understand how best to meet them.
I mean, absolutely. I think, trying to think about the benefits, and absolutely education and qualifications are a benefit. But equally, if you want to upskill me to do a really good job, then, again, is that something that should be expected? I'm thinking, I have been supported to do my master's, I've been supported to do a coaching qualification as well, and they are huge benefits, absolutely. But equally, they do enable me to do a really good job at work as well.
Which is good, right? And employers shouldn't be embarrassed at that. Come here, excel, develop. We benefit from it, you benefit from it. I think is a sweet spot rather than something where I think there's continual choice between, is this a you thing or a me thing?
But again, is it actually a benefit that we would traditionally call a benefit? Should it be part and parcel of that employment relationship?
But then I know, there is the thing that we've all talked about, which is there is the cost of this. Because if you start thinking about larger organisations to put something in, it costs a lot of money. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But there is the thing of, if you start to implement lots of different things, you all of a sudden have a cost base which becomes quite substantial. So actually one of the things is, I think you were sort of saying earlier, what is it that people want? Can we provide that? And having a benefits package that is potentially agile, and actually in some cases we go, actually we're going to drop that because we're implementing this. Having that honest conversation, because commercially we can't offer everything, but what we're hearing is this is now more relevant than that was, let's move to that. But have that, we've talked about communication a couple of times, communicate with people, engage with people, but demonstrate we're also listening. We've heard that you want this, we've looked at this, we can do it.
Yeah, and having partnerships then, but then we're probably wasting a lot of money on certain things because we get a really good deal through our procurement process that nobody's taking up when we look at the stats. So maybe it's about partnering with others to get better discounts or a trade-off in some way.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm making, and we'll move on to another thing, I'm getting very philosophical today, but if you mistake your benefits package for your entire EVP for value proposition, that's just in case anyone's listening, it's unlikely, but just in case I needed to clear that. If you mistake your benefits package that you list for that, then I think you go down a very unhelpful route. If you genuinely understand what it is people need from you as an employer, the traditional benefits package can form part of that. But to your question around, is education, is investment in me really a benefit? It certainly is for the individuals. And we've got kind of you would choose to work for an employer that wants to invest in you rather than anything else. I think that's true of the other elements. I'd want to work for an employer where they've got a really good reputation for bringing on talent, and I can maybe move from that organisation to another or flourish within that. And I think thinking about it more broadly in terms of that offer stops you ever being tempted to go, I've got a massive list of things over here, I can slap it on the advert, so that's good and we're strong and comparative. When what you actually might need to do, and I think this is a really important one, if you can't afford upper quartile pay, there's no reason you can't provide someone with an upper quartile manager and support and environment. And that's what's going to get you that performance bump, and people want to come and work there and want to stay. And I think that's the bit where if you're doing things without thinking, there's no way that you can be doing them with a laser sharp focus on the outcomes that you need to deliver. And that's to the detriment of individuals and organisations. We're going to talk about friction now. We're going to talk about friction in organisations, but not the type of friction you may expect. So we're not talking about conflict. We're not talking about arguments and people throwing stuff at each other. We're talking about a perceived pushback against the constant drive for efficiency. We're going to talk about this through a few different lenses. But there's a concept doing the rounds. And when I say doing the rounds, it came up in our research, but also I was chatting to a CTO of a tech company about this earlier in the week, called friction maxing. Friction maxing. And at its core, it's about intentionally choosing slower or more hands-on ways of working, because that will make the task feel more meaningful. So what you're doing is you might be doing a document yourself rather than using AI to help support you through that. You might be choosing an in-person conversation rather than an exchange of quick messages, even though the quick messages might get the job done. And it's to try and preserve that sense of achievement that people have in their work. And dare I say it, occasionally, joy in your work. I have solved a problem. That was a good day. Whereas outsourcing it or finding other ways to do it is a challenge. And there's something about the increasing transactionality of work that people are trying to avoid. This needs to feel meaningful. The way it was brought up to me earlier in the week, and I thought this was really interesting, was also about people trying to preserve their work, to avoid it being automated, to keep their jobs. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, and we're going to drift on to some other subjects as well. But friction max, do you do it? Have you seen it?
I think I do it, yeah. I mean, I use AI more recently, and I do love it in a lot of respects. But then I look at what it produces and I'm like, no, that isn't what I meant. And I need to go back to the basics, or I need to go back to the original source to get that deeper understanding. So I don't think I'm doing it as a sense of satisfaction. I'm doing it more as around understanding and that critical thinking. You talked about joy, having joy at work. I think I just bring my own joy. So whether that's an element of friction maxing going on, I don't know.
You don't want to outsource the joy, do you? That'd be a bad thing to do. Like the AI's picked up the joy, I just sit here. Yeah.
But I wonder, underneath it all, what's going on? Is it the fear around the loss of jobs? Is it around recognition and appreciation and praise and thanks that sometimes can get lost because of the pressures of organisations? So is that what people again are trying to fulfil?
I think I know we were talking earlier, it's interesting, I think, because there's bad and good friction almost. The bad friction is stuff where it takes like 17 days to put in your expenses claim and you've got to go through like 14 forms and etc. That is, of course, I think most people, and I use that as an example, almost anyone in any industry would want to be trying to remove that. So where we can remove that actually helps people because it makes their job easier. It makes their job more, they can get on to stuff that they find rewarding. But I think one of the things that we've got to try and make sure is that we keep that deep thinking. We talk a lot in firms about operational excellence or quality, or making sure that we're defining high standards or retaining high standards. Well, actually, if people have ownership, if they're involved in deep thinking around something, they're owning something, if we can get that balance, actually, when I'm doing something, if you feel you're involved in it, you feel like, wow, I'm actually, you were saying before, I've made a difference, I'm doing something. That is something that we should try and make sure that we're retaining. But of course, we should also try and get rid of the bad stuff as well. I know good and bad isn't necessarily the best term, but I'm going with it. I think there is an opportunity, but I do think that deep thinking, that ownership, that collaboration with colleagues, that focus on quality, there are real opportunities for this if we can get it right.
Absolutely. And I was thinking the word contribution really came up when you were talking there. And I think really having that sense of achievement that you have contributed, like you say, you have owned something as well. But I keep coming back to appreciation being such a fundamental thing in some of the conversations I'm having anyway from a HR profession, and that this lack of confidence, I think some of that comes from a lack of appreciation, a lack of contribution, well, underappreciated really, and decisions just being made that have not taken on board your contribution. So whether there's that element of, if I put all this effort into this thing, then at least I get my own internal satisfaction if I'm not getting it elsewhere.
You have those moments though, where you sit back and you go, yeah, I've done well. And it might be because they're difficult situations.
Do you?
Do I ever?
You obviously do.
Well, I mean, like,
I'm opening up a bit now. I'm not sure I do.
You never have a moment and you go, that went well. Ever. Sorry, this might be a whole new podcast.
We're going
to coaching. I guess there's times where I think that's gone really well. And the people that I'm dealing with, I guess. But it may not always be an approach that the organisation may want. We might need to edit this.
I know. So there's it's a really important point. So there's a thing. We're just going to go for a couple more minutes. I'm going to talk about this because it's an important thing for anyone listening.
I think it is important.
There's a thing around internal scorecards and external scorecards, and your internal scorecard should be the most important one. Mm-hmm. And what that means is it's better for you to understand the standards that you work into and to try and maintain them. And take external reference points and data points than it is constantly for the only affirmation of that to be external. Because you risk two things if you're relying on the external. You risk other people bringing your standards down, or you risk people not understanding the context and therefore not understanding what's been achieved. So the key thing is, do you have a firm enough grasp on your own standards to know you've done a good job? And Warren Buffett used to talk about it, but my favourite example of this is Michael Keaton, who had years out. Batman was a massive hit, and then he went and kind of took years out just living with his family and stuff like that. And he got interviewed by a journalist after this period out, and they went, what went wrong? And he kind of went, nothing from my point of view. Because the standards being set by the industry was, you need to be here, you need to be making films, you need to be famous. The standards that he had internally that he was really clear on is, these are things that matter to me. Yeah. So we'll have you back on again and let's talk about that, because it's really fascinating. But I think it's really important not to look for that affirmation. If you've had a difficult meeting, if you had a difficult challenge, if you solved something, it's enough to go, I did a good job on that, because I know what a good job looked like coming in from it, and it's a good outcome on the far side. So Rob, we'll let you have the final view on this, but Michael Keaton, Batman, great.
How do I follow that? Where do I go with that? But I think one of the things we've touched on a couple of times today is communication. And I think one of the things now is, in an environment where more things being automated, we're trying to make things more efficient. Clients are asking for things to be done more efficiently. Actually, I think it is about communication with people. It's about going, look, actually, we used to do this, but now we do it this way. And the reason why we're doing that is this, but what this means for you is this. It is that communication. And we talked earlier as well about being honest and going, look, we know what this will mean in, I'm saying 6 months is an average timeline. We may not in other situations, but we're going to work with you. We're going to make sure that, we're having honest conversations with you about what's going on. And I think communication, again, comes back to that whole thing of authentic, individual conversation with people so that they actually feel part of what's going on and they want to be part of what's going on, I think is so important.
And it goes back to what you said earlier about that real ability for somebody to feel heard, though. So in that communication that you've said, that transparency is brilliant, but also understanding the impact that it might have for people. No. And equally, you might still need to then go and make the decision that you need to, but it's more informed. But again, then the justification of why you're making the decision is really important as well. And I know that organisations can say all of that takes time, but it is really important to get that buy-in. If we go back to buy-in and engagement.
Yeah.
Oh, look, you've done a great job here today. I kind of want to say that. I do not, by the way, I do not, like, for anyone listening, I don't get that feeling often, but when it happens, it's a really nice one. I guess to the point around friction maxing is, if you outsource everything, you're never going to get that feeling.
Yeah.
That you will, if it's just drifting through other systems and places and you don't feel any ownership, it's really difficult to go, actually, I may have had a struggle here, but that bit was okay. I'm quite happy with the outcome there. We'll definitely talk about that.
But it is really important, and I do see that coming up so much. I think that internal balance for people is misaligned. So yes, let's do another.
Well, let's do another one. Like look, two things that I always say to students, it's that, and you've got to have your own red lines, and they have to be your red lines. Because otherwise, if people set your red lines throughout your career, then you don't really stand for anything. You'll cross any boundary. It's a really fascinating piece, but yeah, I think one of those things when people are feeling depleted, bring it full circle, or they feel under pressure, you've got to recognise, you've got to catch when things are going well, because there's always going to be some stuff that should be going better than it is doing. You've got to catch when that stuff's going well. First of all, you've both done a wonderful job. Thank you so much to Sasi and Rob. Welcome to everyone who wasn't expecting the Michael Keaton Life Choice Appreciation podcast. But we got there in the end, and we'll come back and we'll do some other stuff on that. Anyway, we'll include links to a number of useful and important supporting resources following this. And as I say, for some of the heavier things we've spoken about today, there are resources available, there is support available. Please do reach out. We publish new episodes of this podcast every fortnight, so do make sure to follow or subscribe. You've obviously found us at least once, and tell all your friends as well. I had a suggestion from someone, and I'll pick out their name so I can properly name check them next time, around us doing something with people who are newer to the profession, and we'll find a way to do one of those episodes in the near future. I think it's a really great idea. Please do let us know what you want us to focus on. We also draw a lot of our inspiration from the community threads that we have at the CIPD as well. So if you're contributing to our communities in any form, we'll go, that's interesting, we can see something developing there. My name's David D'Souza, and this has been the CIPD HR People Pod.